Welcome to Hustle and Pro Season 2, talking sports in Frisco from youth to pro. Now here's your host, Kelly Walker.
Welcome to Hustle and Pro. It took us well over a year and more than 50 episodes to get a skateboarder on here, but today is the day. John Davidson, welcome to Hustle and Pro.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to learn your story. Like I said, skateboarding, this is our first skateboarding episode, so you're going to teach us some things today and dive into your story. But first, a couple quick hits. Can you tell me who's your favorite athlete? Either favorite athlete in your sport or just kind of overall favorite athlete?
Yeah, I think I would say in skateboarding, Nigel Houston, just because he's the best in the world. He's the best in the streets as well as competitions. Skateboarders know the big difference between that. I love athletes that dominate the competition. I'm not an underdog guy. I'm an overdog guy. I just love to watch the best just destroy everybody else. So I was a big Michael Jordan fan. I had an opportunity actually when I was 10 years old to play basketball with Michael Jordan.
No way.
Yeah. It was at a camp in Fresno, California. And I can't remember the name of the guy who ran it, but I remember seeing a documentary on Michael Jordan later, and he was one of his teammates that was a very close friend. Mm-hmm. He wasn't like a Scottie Pippen level or somebody you would really know, but for some reason they were very close friends, and so Michael would come out to Fresno, California of all places.
Yeah, that's weird.
And all the kids got to play with him. So I loved his dominance. I loved watching LeBron dominate. Barry Sanders was my favorite football player growing up. And I grew up as a 49er fan in California. Uh-huh. And my brother convinced me, I think I was 10 years old, that I had to like the Lions as my favorite team because Barry Sanders was my favorite player, and it completely destroyed my fandom because it's tough to be a Lions fan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd go with those three, Nyjah, Jordan, and Barry Sanders with LeBron as a recent interest.
Okay, that's a good variety there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite sports movie?
Oh, man, that's a good one.
I mean, are there skateboarding movies?
There's no good skateboarding movies.
Yeah, I was like,
There are skateboarding movies. There's none you'd ever want to watch. It's a tough thing to translate. It's such a pure space that when you try to act it, in fact, Rob Dyrdek, who's probably the most successful skateboarder from a business standpoint, he produced a movie called Street Dreams, and he had real pro skateboarders, Paul Rodriguez, Ryan Checkler. They had a real screenwriter who wrote it, and it was still little weird.
Street Dreams?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, documentaries, there's probably some fantastic documentaries about skateboarding, I would assume.
Yeah,
I've seen some about surfing and other similar type of sports that can probably translate when you get to when you get to do the voiceover and, explain it and really dive in that way.
Actually, that's a great point. A documentary that I helped to produce just premiered on Tony Hawk Pro Skater. It's called Pretending I'm Superman.
Okay.
And it's on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game. So I guess I should say that's my favorite one. It premiered at the Mammoth Film Festival. It won 2 awards.
Oh, wow.
The awards were Best Documentary and Best Action Sports Film at the film festival.
Wow. Okay, we'll link to it in the show notes so people can find it easier. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, yeah. But what about mainstream sports movie? Are you
What pops in my head? I think I'm not a huge sports movie guy, but what pops in my head is Remember the Titans. I'm a big Denzel Washington fan, so that's a good one. I think Field of Dreams is kind of automatic.
You were reading my mind. That's one of mine. Yeah.
I'm trying. So we'll go with
definitely on my list. Okay, so now we've obviously talked that you're a skateboarder, and we'll talk about that, but what did sports overall look like for you as a kid growing up?
Yeah, I was super into sports. In fact, skateboarding was just another sport to me at first. I've been pretty athletic my whole life. I was really into sports. I played every sport. My parents put me in the youth leagues in a small town in Central California called Breedley, California. I played baseball, basketball. I played football my freshman year of high school. I did long distance running. We had these what's called a jogathon. Do you know what a jogathon is for like elementary kids to raise money for
Yeah,
schools?
I mean, we have walkathons and running kind of things where you're doing a certain amount of laps. Maybe if you're raising money, you might be donating per lap or something. When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I did a cartwheel-a-thon because I was a gymnast.
Whoa.
So we had to do cartwheels.
How long does a
I was
cartwheel
so little, I
go?
don't
Go 10
remember.
seconds?
Yeah, I know. When you're a gymnast and that's your life, like you can cartwheel all day, man. You
Wow.
can keep going. Yeah. So anyway, you did a
And so-
jogathon?
Yeah, so I won every jogathon from kindergarten to 6th grade, kind of randomly. In fact, in kindergarten, they almost gave me second place because I lapped the other kid.
Oh, they miscounted you.
So they miscounted, and then my mom was a teacher at that school in 5th grade, and when I was in kindergarten, and her kids, they were about to give me second place, and her kids came to her and they're like, "Hey, John won," and the principal had also seen that I had gone a full lap. I was just beyond the other kid, so that's kind of funny. But let's see, I played soccer. I refereed soccer as well. I played varsity tennis. In fact, we won a county championship at my
Wow.
school. What else?
So you had a lot of things.
I used to win these free throw competitions.
Okay.
Um,
So a little bit of everything. What sport do you think gave you the best skills to make you a good skateboarder? Or is it a little bit of everything?
I don't think there's any comparison, to be honest with you. The funny thing about it is I think skateboarding is more you're born with it, you have it or you don't, more than any other sport I've ever seen.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that because I don't have it. And I feel like I just don't think it's something that I'm meant to do.
Right.
The few times I've
Yeah.
gotten on a skateboard, I'm like, no, that's not my natural feel. I'd rather put on a glove, do other things, like other sports that I feel super comfortable at. But yeah, good.
Well, the thing about that I always compare is like in traditional sports, you can master fundamentals, right? And you can hustle. So there's some people who they can get a college scholarship just by mastering fundamentals and hustling.
Yep.
You know, some people even if you're super tall, you could get in the NBA by just being a energy guy.
yeah, work
right?
ethic and things that go a long way.
Right, and skateboarding has no fundamentals. And skateboarding is actually much more art than it is sport. And this might be a deeper conversation, but the reason I say that is skateboarding is all about style. Mm-hmm. It's how you look on the board, the way you catch the trick.
Some finesse and
Exactly. So when you do those things, you could do a number of different types of tricks, and you could be able to do every trick in the book. And no matter how many tricks you can do, if they don't look good, nobody's gonna take you seriously. There's a number of skaters who just don't naturally have good style. They won't get any sponsors, etc. Also,
like if it looks forced or too textbook, it's
Yeah, or
probably not what they're looking for.
yeah, when you smooth, exactly. There's Shane O'Neill. He's an Australian skateboarder. He's a guy who's probably best. You could argue best skater in the world. I said Nigel's my favorite, but I think Shane O'Neill would be a close second. Just the best guy to watch on a board.
Okay.
And the other thing about it is skateboarding does have competitions, but skateboarding is not competitive by nature. It's expression. And so the biggest thing in the skateboarding world is video parts. It's photography and putting a video part together. And what that means is video parts are usually 3 to 7 minutes. And these guys it used to be years putting video parts together, traveling all over the world, filming at different spots. Now these guys are so good, and the way we consume content has changed. So it's about 6 months for a video part.
Oh, wow.
But for those reasons, for example, if you do a kickflip, which is you pop the board in the air and it flips one time, the way I put my foot for a kickflip could be very different than the way somebody else does. And although physics determines how a skateboard would flip, it could flip with the nose in the air or the tail in the air, like the way you catch it with your back foot or both feet or however.
And it's all good. Anything goes. It depends on how it looks and how you land it.
Anything goes depending on how it looks.
There's no technical. Are there technical scores too when you're in a competition?
That's the most challenging thing about competitions is it's so subjective.
Okay.
So,
But I mean, the technical pieces probably lie in if it's if it's supposed to go 180 degrees or 360, whatever the different numbers are. Those things have to kind of check the box, I bet, right, to make that trick like count
A
or
little
something?
bit.
Or is it all just
it's much more subjective than
Okay.
even that.
Okay.
So the other thing too is some tricks are just easier for different skaters. So there's some tricks that are really hard that I can do very easily, and there's some tricks that are really easy for other people that are very hard for me to do, and I can't even do them at all. And so you could say, for me, if I did a kick flip down a set of stairs versus a heel flip down a set of stairs, a heel flip's a lot harder for me to do. Well, how do you score those things, right? And compared to, and there's all of these other things. Skateboarding's very political as well, and so it creates a lot of challenges at the competitive level.
I bet, yeah.
Because there's no, I guess gymnast maybe the
right, that's what I
thing.
keep thinking of, yeah.
But there's, as far as I know about it, I'm not an expert, but there's certain things that are kind of worth a certain amount,
Oh,
right?
yeah. There's definite value to different tricks.
Right. And so
they have to be, certain pieces of the element have to be done, like I said, a certain number of spins or flips or whatever, rotations, have to be done to get that value out of that trick.
Yeah. So there's, you
it's
also,
not that.
it's such a deep, convoluted conversation. You'll even see somebody will do a trick, maybe for the first time ever in competition, it scored really highly, and then they'll practice that trick, they'll master it for the next competition. The next competition, they're not scored as highly, because they're like, oh, you're...
we saw you do that before.
That's easy for you.
Yeah.
Where it shouldn't
the
be...
wow factor.
It shouldn't be it's easy for you. It should be that trick is worth X. Right?
Yeah. Is the sport evolving towards that at all, or is it just sort of that's the way it's going to be? You don't know, but your best guess.
Yeah, well, skateboarding will be in the Olympics this year for the first time, and that'll be just I think a bigger deal as far as judging goes.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen I remember ice skating. There were, judge controversies, conspiracies, and stuff, and so
being in the Olympics, it might force some consistencies. It's got to have some structure to it in order for there to be, outcomes that athletes are going to be okay with.
Yeah, there's a consistent striving towards that, but it's just so difficult. Style, it's one thing if two guys do the same trick and one just does it and it just looks a lot better. That's one thing. Is a frontside crooked grind scored higher than a kickflip backside lip slide? Which one's more technical, but the other one's more stylish? It's a mess to try to judge.
One question: when I've seen guys like you go do your run, is that what it's called? You gonna do a run?
Yep.
Okay. Do you wing it, or do you have it all choreographed in your mind and mapped out exactly what you're doing, or does it whatever feels like if you just did a trick and you're going to try to compound something after that? Do you have to change it if you're feeling something different under there?
That's a great question. What you do see from the best skaters is it's all mapped out. Nigel Houston is very well known for having his run down to the second.
Okay.
So he's packing so many tricks in, but he's landing his final trick with just like a second to go. It's super impressive. And what you'll see him do, and this is a pretty good strategy for most skaters when they're doing runs, is you do a basic run, basic or kind of mid-level run, and then once you land your next one, you add one or two more technical tricks, like the last trick will be harder or something.
Because you've landed the first few, you have some momentum,
right?
And then it's a chance to take more risk, maybe.
Now you have other skaters like Evan Smith is one of the most talented skaters in the world, and he's very creative, and so he completely wings it. He never wins any competitions, but he's often a fan favorite because he's going out there doing crazy stuff. You never know what he's going to do.
Pushes himself maybe based on the guy that went before him.
Exactly.
Or the score.
And he's just a very, he's not there to win. He's there to have fun. And a lot of skateboarding, too, is when I've managed skateboarding teams in the past, and, when I had guys go to competition, I knew they wouldn't win. I'd say your job is to make it in the recap video, right? Your job is not to win the competition. It's to get a highlight trick.
To be memorable.
Be memorable.
To make the people that go want to come back or come seek you out the next time.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I got ahead of myself here, but I'm curious to know your path. Tell me about the path you took to get into, being a skateboarder for a living, because I'm sure I'm curious about the ages, how that happens, how the sponsorships happen. That, to me, that's what I think you mean when you say for a living.
Yes.
You mentioned competition versus street skaters, so that's a lot in that question. But tell me, what did that look like getting into it for you then?
Yeah, it's a great question. I credit a lot of it with timing, as far as where I lived, the time in the industry as it was emerging, and all that. So as I said, I played all sports. I skated a little bit when I was in second grade. I would skate to school and back, and I could never quite ollie up a curb. I wasn't very good. I was super small, you know? I mean, I don't know if anybody's good at skating in second grade. I definitely wasn't. But so I got into racing bikes. And so I was about to really get into it, and I got a C on my report card in fourth grade. As I mentioned, my mom is a teacher, and so...
That C didn't go over well, I'm sure, then.
Not at all. And English, it was in English. English is my best subject, and I was able to read ahead of my grade level. And so I was reading these massive books in class and not doing my homework, so victim of my own success, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that guy lived literally 2 blocks from our house. So it's kind of, I haven't seen him in a long time, but, you know, when it's still going back to Central California, I would see him every once in a while, and it's kind of like, hey, you know, you're kind of thanks for that C. So I started skating when I was 11. I found we had in a closet, had my old skateboard, pulled it out, and I started trying kick flips, which is, it's a basic trick, but it's a little bit of a barometer of how good you are.
Yeah, if you can
do
get
them,
that.
how often you can, how consistent you can be and stuff. And so I started trying kick flips, and I started landing kick flips. I was like, oh my gosh, crazy.
So was there a gap, though, between with the second grade and the C in English? Did you stop? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
You stopped. So
I
then when you
stopped.
picked it back up at 11, you kind of instantly were better at it or good.
Yeah,
like the kickflips were coming.
Something clicked.
Okay.
I couldn't even explain it.
Okay.
And so my brother, he's 3 years older than I am. We've been best friends our whole lives, done everything together. So we started skating together, and he had the passion and the love for it. And for me, it was just another sport. It was another activity. But I was naturally pretty good at it. And so after skating for a year or two, my brother was like, John's really good at skateboarding. Maybe he could get a sponsor, blah, blah, blah. And so I never got into it with the perspective of getting sponsored or do anything with it. Nowadays, kids, you know, start with the goal to be sponsored because everybody's
How
sponsored.
young do kids nowadays get sponsors? Obviously, this sport has continued to grow since you were part of it. But
Yeah.
So maybe you got yours when you were 13, 14, something like that. Is that
14,
common?
yeah.
I mean, is it common for even younger kids to have...
Yeah, nowadays, because
Deals?
it's so much more mainstream, and there's different levels of sponsorship that I can go into. But yeah, I think if you see kids that could be maybe 11 or 12 or something like that, they could have their first sponsor. I got my first sponsor when I was 14,
Okay.
and but to backtrack a little bit about that is when I was skating, nobody was sponsored that we knew. There was a rumor that the best guy in our town got a free skateboard from somebody one time.
Yeah.
So that was a major difference was when it was like,
What does that even
sponsor-
mean? Right. Because
Exactly.
there's a difference in sponsoring, giving you some shoes or gear or skateboard, right, versus money.
Exactly. So what happened was I started skating, started taking it more seriously. We started filming. There was a skate park started to get built in my area. And then skate shops started to pop up to meet the demand of the growing popularity of skateboarding. And there was this one, actually, it's called Mainland Surf Shop in Central California. And then there was this other brand new one called Onshore Board Shop. And so Onshore sponsored this this skateboarding contest, and I ended up winning it. And so that was the second contest I skated. My first one, I skated incredibly well in the warm-ups, and I got so nervous I didn't land. I landed one trick in my whole line, but I got second place because they saw how good I skated in warm-ups.
Oh. Carried over into the competition.
Yeah, I feel bad for the other kids. But so I skated really well in the second one. I won the contest, and I got, you know, gift cards for the skate shop and everything. So I went there. I got to know them a little bit. Well, I had convinced myself that I wanted to skate for this shop, Mainland. And I became more of a fan as I just started thinking about it. So I made my skate video, and it was let's see, it was on a VHS tape, and I only made one copy, which thinking back was
You
not
got to
very
give that
smart.
to someone, right?
Well, I went to this skate shop, and I didn't really know the owners, but I went and I'm this little kid. They didn't see me skate. Like, they probably don't have an idea that I'm any good. They just see this weird little kid walking in with his brother. And I said, "Hey, do you sponsor people?" And they're like, "Maybe." And I was like, "Oh, I have my tape here. Will you watch it?" And they said, they were kind of jerks, to be honest with you. And they were, I don't remember their names or anything, so I'm not hating on the skate shop. But those guys in particular just weren't nice to me that day.
They didn't welcome you and say, yeah, pop it in. Let's watch it with you.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, if you leave it, maybe the owner can watch it later." And I was like, "But this is my only copy." And they're
You worked
like,
so hard for it.
yeah, they're like, "Well, you should have made more copies." They're like, "You know what? Let's go down the street to Onshore." And I did, and the guy, that was where, he knew me because I won his contest, and he said, "Yeah, let's watch it right now. Sponsor me in the spot."
See, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Why not? If
And I was the very first sponsored skateboarder in that area. There were some in Fresno, which is a bigger town. There were some guys over there, but I was, 30 minutes an hour the other way. And so I was kind of the first guy to get sponsored. There was a lot of experimentation, like, what does sponsorship mean? What do I get? Start off with one free board a month and a discount on everything in the store, and then my family got half my discount or something like that. And then it grew, and it kind of figured it out. And your first sponsor is your most difficult one, and then it kind of opens up.
I bet, yeah.
And what's really helped me understand marketing and branding and influencer marketing is being a brand ambassador myself from age 14. And so, fortunately, I think I went further than I would have. I went further because I understood sponsorship than I would have just based on my talents. So I knew that
because the sport probably wasn't at a place where people were reaching out to you.
Right.
You have to go advocate and push yourself out there and show people who you are. And it's not just like that I'm a skateboarder. It's, this is what I look like. This is my vibe. This is what I can, who people are that are paying attention to me, and kind of connect the dots for that brand and make sure it's a match, right? So you have to make sure the brand or you're good for the brand, and you have to go voice that and literally walk up to these people and ask for what you want.
Yeah, and essentially you have to understand that the brand makes more money as a result of giving you free stuff than if they don't give you free stuff, right? And it's not just because you're cool that you get free stuff. It's because you champion the brand, you represent them well. You're wearing and writing their stuff. Anytime you have, you're putting stickers and stuff everywhere, you're talking to people about it, you're an ambassador for it. And so my sponsors, I think I got more sponsors because I just naturally understood that. And so I was a good writer for them, a good ambassador for those programs. And so what happens, it's kind of funny, skateboarding was influencer marketing before influencer
Before
marketing.
it was a thing,
right?
that we say now.
Exactly. So it's funny when I look back, I'm like, we've been doing this for years, But
just there was no social to put it on.
That's right.
There's no digital platform for it. It was just events on site, hands-on events only, right? And then in the video component, like you talked about.
Right. So essentially, a skater has a number of sponsors. You have kind of a sponsor for each category. A lot of these brands are owned by a broader umbrella company, so you'll see the same guys on a lot of the same brands because the umbrella company kind of sponsors and gives them all their gear. Well, one of the things is that what was it? Oh, that is what it was. Is you have your skateboard sponsor, and then there's reps. There's local reps, right? So the reps are tasked with selling gear in that area. So then the shop owner would talk to the shoe reps and say, "Hey, I've got this guy. He's the best skater in town.
Oh, so they would
if you
help
give him
you
shoes, that can help you sell more of your shoes in my shop.
Get more sponsors."
And that kind of opened up the
and
floodgates.
It helps the shop, more revenue, more people in the door.
Yeah,
That's
so
cool.
I was able to gain clothing sponsors, shoe sponsors, skateboard sponsors, etc. I remember the first time a lot of what you get at that level is just free stuff. You're not getting paid. And the first time I got paid, I think I was 17 years old, and there was a festival in town, And this guy reached out to them in a skate shop and he's like, hey, I want to do a skateboard thing. Who would you recommend to be the skater? And so he recommended me, thankfully. So I called the guy, and it's so funny. He's like, I got $175, and either you can bring other guys you want to skate with you, or it's all yours. And the worst case scenario in skateboarding is to do a demo by yourself.
Oh, okay.
And I've done, and for people who don't know what a skateboard demo is, essentially a team comes, they're typically a lot better than everybody in the town.
Locally,
they're pros or whatever.
To show off the skills and entertain a crowd.
People just watch them skate.
So you don't want to do that by
product
yourself?
And stuff. It's the worst case scenario.
You probably don't get downtime and it's all eyes on you. You don't get to stop and think, I guess. So
Yes.
you need partners to be kind of trading off with you as you're doing tricks and things.
Yeah, in fact, skating in a demo is even very different than actual skateboarding because it's a show. So if you know how to do it, I've done them all over the country. I was on a tour for 6 months straight at one time, where we did demos every day. But it's a show. You have, you do tricks you can land within 3 tries. You got this guy go, then this guy goes, then this guy goes. It's enough to entertain people. When you have one guy go, and it's a bunch of ramps or a skate park or something.
Yeah.
Number one, you better hope you're skating well that day. Number two, everybody's just thinking, why
What
can't
else?
I skate?
Oh, yeah.
I'm standing here watching this guy skate.
This guy's taking up our skate park.
Right, why
Okay.
can't we skate?
Yeah.
And then you've got a couple haters who are like, I could do that.
Right. Gotcha.
So we set up all these ramps. And I did a few tricks. I skated for 5 minutes, and then I grabbed the microphone and I said, hey, why doesn't everybody come skate with me? And so that worked out pretty well.
But you got your pay. That was your first payday.
Mm-hmm. First payday. And then, there were, all sorts of forms of payday, from per diem to winning contests to free rent. Mm-hmm. When I lived with the owner of a company in Orlando, Florida.
Does it get to a point where that's your 100%, that is your job? That's all you're doing?
Yeah, I had different short times throughout my career where that was 100% of my income. There's a major haves and have-nots in skateboarding. And there's also a very specific distinction between pro and not pro or amateur. So there's 3 levels of sponsorship. There's flow, which means you're just getting flowed product from company. There's AM, or amateur,
Okay.
which means you're officially on a team, you're on the website, you travel with the team, etc., you get paid. And then there's pro, which means you have your own signature products.
Oh, okay.
And your status is determined by your skateboard sponsor. And then the other sponsors follow suit. So that's why I always phrase it, because it's so difficult to understand, that I just always say, I used to skateboard for a living, because people understand that. But
Versus
people,
the pro, or what level?
Right.
Because you probably go in and out of different levels, I bet. I mean,
you can,
or
yep.
or once you have a pro. So you're saying pro is, what did you say? It's
having your own signature products.
Okay, having your own signature products.
So your skateboard company gives you a skateboard with your name on it,
Okay.
your own designs, and you start to get those,
like
and
your
then
line of
your own line of
merchandise and
signature stuff.
Okay.
So I never had my own line of signature stuff. I had a company that, just because I was with them for so long, and I also had a lot of on the business side, and they said, hey John, when you want a signature board, it's yours. But I was like, I don't deserve that. I'm not at the level of these other guys. And so it'd be, in my opinion, it's much better that people would want to bestow that on you and you turn it down than you have it and you don't deserve it. So
Do it too early, and then people maybe don't embrace it.
right.
Or something.
So it's funny because people outside of skateboarding would say, "Oh, you were pro. You got paid to skate, and you were able to make a living on it, whether it was a short time or whatever." People inside skateboarding would say, "You weren't pro because you didn't have your own."
Gotcha. So
Boards.
yeah, I wouldn't have realized the distinction.
So that's why I just say
Yeah.
I used to skateboard for a living. It's
Yeah.
a lot easier.
But hey, it covers their bases, and it's
Right.
it's accurate, right,
Yes,
and true.
most importantly, yeah.
What about now? I mean, you live here in Frisco, by the
Yeah.
way, and you have a family here.
Yeah.
So do you still skateboard, and do you still skateboard with sponsors? And is this still your big part of your life? It's not your full-time job. I know
Yeah.
we're going to talk about that a whole another time, but what does skateboarding look like with you now?
Yeah, so skateboarding now, I skate about once a week because that's what my body can handle. And that's also what my schedule can handle. You know, I do a lot of business stuff. I'm director of business development for PRG, which is the largest entertainment production company in the world. I'm the president of the Sports Trade Association. I'm on boards for Dallas Influencers in Sports and Entertainment, Stadia Ventures, and UNT's Sports and Entertainment MBA.
Yeah, so you've got
So
a
I
schedule. You've got a lot going on.
I'm doing
No time for skateboarding every day.
That's right. And so I try to skate once a day. I love the Frisco Park.
Once a week or once a day?
Sorry,
once a week. Okay.
Once a week, yeah.
Here in town at that
Yeah, it's
skate park,
Northeast Community Park.
Yep.
There's good ones all over the DFW area. I have a company called Ambassador Skateboards, who I've skated for them for 10 years. Every once in a while, I'll ask the owner, am I still technically sponsored? And he's like, yeah, of course you are. But, you know, I'll have free boards from those guys kind of for life sort of a thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like...
The relationships you've built obviously are what made it possible for you to continue doing this long, even from the
Big time.
beginning. Just
Yeah.
the relationship. I mean, the example you gave of the 2 skate shops in California, the relationship you had with one, not knowing why you were building it,
Right.
is what turned it into a deal for you.
Yeah, so with a relationship, so, I mean, you know, business is relationship based. You work with who you like to work with. You know, I always tell people a lot of business comes down to, are you cool to hang out with? You know, which is if you and I are trapped in a room for 2 days because we got a crazy project deadline we need to meet, can we stand each other?
Right.
If you're funny, that's a bonus. But more importantly, if things go south in a deal or we have a conflict, can we work together to develop a solution between us, or are you going to fly off the handle and cuss me out and all
Right.
this craziness? And so, you know, everything's relationship based, including skateboarding. And, you know, I'm very blessed to have had, like I said, I understood sponsorship. And so developing the deals, you know, the relationships with my reps. And there was one time I skated for Globe Shoes, excuse me. Skated for them for 5 years. And there was one point where the rep dropped everybody off the team except for me. And he said, John, you know, some people just think they're cool enough to get shoes.
And that's enough for them. That's all they think they may have to be, is just cool enough to get their shoes.
That's
What
right.
were you doing different?
What I was doing different was I was an ambassador for the brand. So I was doing a lot of demos. I was going on tours. I was doing contests. I was regularly, I think this was after Facebook had started. So I was regularly posting, like, you know, people were buying Globe shoes because I was
You were doing the
wearing
work.
them.
You were putting in the work. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm 100% convinced that, you know, at least some of those guys were a lot better at skateboarding than I was. But it doesn't always come down to talent.
It doesn't. I mean, we see that with professional sports spokespeople and brands all the time. The ones we see on TV aren't always, I mean, we probably think they're some of the best players, but they might not be. They just might be the right personality or have the following or whatever it is that brand, even their backstory or where they're from. I mean, there's so many factors that go into why a brand wants somebody to be their voice, way beyond the talent on the field or the court or whatever.
And in addition, a lot of it has to do with opportunities too, right? Because you can be very talented, but you also have to have opportunities to be able to take advantage of those, and then people have to want you to be around, right? So I'm sure there's guys who have been tremendous talents in football, baseball, basketball, etc., who didn't get opportunities or didn't take advantage of opportunities because they didn't have the other parts of it filled out, right? Whether it was personality, whether it was easy to work with, whether it was understanding the business side where, okay, you know, I'm getting to know everybody in the locker room. I mean, I'm getting to know the guys who are the security guys.
Right.
You know, I think you've seen, you know, in the recent past, there's been a number of players towards the end of their career, and they've had to retire early or they can't find a team, right? Because they're not getting along with people, and they've relied on their talent for so long. But guess what? that only works when you're the best in the world.
Right.
And you're not the best in the world for that long.
Forever. No.
And then people are also waiting to be able to get rid of you because you can get away with a lot
When you're winning.
when you're winning.
Yeah.
And when you stop winning, and like it's like we don't have to put up with that crap.
Yeah.
We did before.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, you can probably credit your older brother to helping you get your push, your start with some of those relationships and sponsors too.
Big time.
Yeah.
Well, he had a driver's license,
Uh-huh.
you know, and he was filming me. And he often, you know, it's possible I would have quit skateboarding if it wasn't for him.
But you mentioned he had the passion. So if you had the natural talent for it at that time, the two of you combined is what probably made you a good team
You're
to go
absolutely
get all
right.
that done.
Exactly.
Well, it's fascinating. I know there's so much more to talk about, and I am. We're actually gonna continue the conversation. I want to jump into the esports side of your business background on another episode. But for now, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll link to some of those things you mentioned in the show notes. So thank you to everyone for listening to this episode of Hustle and Pro. Subscribe, and we'll see you next time.